The clay jar sat alone on the edge of the battlefield, half buried in dust, cracked from years of weather, yet still strong enough to hold a man. That man was quiet, still, and strange to the aliens who often passed by without noticing. But he noticed everything. His eyes, calm and unblinking, followed every movement, every whisper of danger in the wind. He had no name anymore. Once, long ago, he had one, but now he was just the man in the jar. He didn't speak unless it mattered. He didn't leave the jar unless he had to. And when he did, strange things always followed. It began with the war. The humans didn't start it. They were just trying to survive on the edge of the galaxy, building small colonies and planting crops in the dirt. But one day, the sky cracked open and ships poured in, sleek, deadly ships from the Rillick Empire. No one had expected it. The humans were outmatched, outgunned, and laughed at. The Queen of Rillick, Queen Virith, didn't see humans as a threat. She called them clay dwellers, a joke about their primitive shelters and weak bodies. Even their homes melt in the rain, she once said while sipping Starvine wine. To her, the war was entertainment. The clay jars sat on a hill when the first wave hit the human colony of Tharon Ridge. Explosions rained from the sky. Alien weapons burned buildings into ash, and soldiers in black armor marched through fire like it was a parade. People screamed. Some ran. Some fought back. Most died, but the man in the jar did not move. He watched as a mother tried to shield her son with her body. He watched as a small girl crawled under the remains of a transport, shaking. In silence. He watched and said nothing until the wind changed. A Rillick scout noticed the jar. "Odd little pot," he said, kicking it. But before he could laugh, a hand reached out. Dry, pale, and fast. The soldier's body went stiff. His helmet cracked like an egg under pressure. Then his entire suit folded inward, pulled by something unseen, something impossible. His screams didn't last long. That was the first. Whispers spread among the Rillick forces. The humans called him a monk. Others said he was cursed. Some believed he wasn't human at all. Queen Virith ignored the rumors. She didn't believe in fear. Her empire had crushed hundreds of planets. A man in a jar was beneath her attention. Still, when another 10 soldiers vanished near the same hill, she grew curious. She sent a war mage to investigate. The mage floated above the ground, wrapped in purple fire, speaking ancient tongues as he descended. The man in the jar looked up. The mage raised his hand. "Reveal yourself," he hissed. The jar didn't move. The mage laughed, raising a bolt of searing plasma. "Then burn." He threw it down, but the fire bent mid-air. It didn't strike the jar. It twisted upward and hit the mage square in the chest. His scream echoed across the hills. Nothing remained but a ring of black ash. That was when Queen Virith paid attention. She didn't understand how a man with no armor, no weapons, no technology could kill a Rillick war mage. It defied logic. So she came herself. Her ship was the size of a city, and when it landed, the dust of the valley turned red. The queen stood tall, in robes made of living thread that moved like waves. Her face was beautiful but sharp, her eyes like frozen stars. She walked toward the jar without fear. "You there," she said. "Come out." Nothing. She waited. She was not used to being ignored. "I am Queen Virith of the Rillick Empire," she declared. "I grant you one chance. Speak. Why have you killed my soldiers?" Slowly the jar moved. A creaking sound filled the air. Then the man rose. He was not tall, nor strong-looking. His skin was cracked like dried earth. His eyes were quiet but deep. He didn't bow. He didn't blink. "They disturbed my silence," he said simply. The queen tilted her head. "So you kill for silence?" "I kill for peace," he replied. "Peace," she laughed. You're surrounded by fire and death. There is no peace here." "There was," he said, "until you brought war." She smiled coldly. "Then I offer you a gift, a wish, anything you want. Speak it now." He looked at her. Then he spoke. The words that made her face go still. The man's voice was quiet, but the air seemed to pause around his words. Every sound in the valley faded. Even the distant drones of war machines seemed to hesitate. He looked directly into Queen Virith's eyes, unafraid, and said, "I wish for you to feel everything your victims felt." "Just for 1 hour." The queen blinked once, then again. Her soldiers looked confused. Her advisors froze, unsure if it was a joke, but she could tell he meant every word. "You dare?" she whispered, her voice calm but sharp. "You offered a wish," he said. "That is my wish." Queen Virith's pride was too great to take back her words. She raised her hand, fingers glowing with power. The ancient symbol of her bloodline burned in the air. "So be it," she said. In a flash of light, the spell was cast. The wish was granted. At first, nothing happened. Then Virith staggered. Her breath caught in her throat as a sharp pain stabbed her side. Someone had just lost their child. A second later, her vision blurred and heat rose in her chest, burning. Screaming, choking. She gasped, her knees weakening. Her soldiers rushed forward, but she waved them away. Suddenly, her bones felt like they were being crushed. Her ears filled with the sound of begging, of mothers crying for mercy, of innocent voices calling for help that never came. She dropped to the ground, clutching her skull. For 1 hour, the queen of the Rillic Empire was made to feel everything, every scream, every cut, every hopeless breath of those who had died by her command. Tears poured from her eyes, real tears. She had not cried since she was a child. Her voice, once strong and cold, cracked as she whispered, "Enough, please, enough." But the man in the jar simply sat back down. The wish could not be undone. By the time the hour passed, Queen Virith lay curled on the ground, shaking. Broken, her once glorious robe stained with dirt and sweat. Her commanders stood in silence, unsure what to do. They had never seen her like this. When she finally stood, her legs trembled. Her hands clenched and unclenched. She looked at the man, and her voice was barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" "I am no one," he said. "Just a man who listened." She stared at him. "You could have asked for anything. Power, riches, a kingdom." "I already have peace," he replied. "Even if I must fight for it." That answer struck her harder than any weapon. She returned to her ship without another word. But something had changed. That same night, all attacks on Theron Ridge stopped. The skies cleared. The machines powered down. Still, no one cheered. The survivors were too confused. Why had the Rillic pulled back? The man in the jar gave no answers. He simply stayed on his hill, silent again. But peace didn't last. Within days, Rillic High Lords whispered behind Virith's back. They saw her weakness, her trembling hands, her sudden silence in council meetings. They feared she was cursed, and they hated the man who caused it. They sent assassins, not one, but 5, trained in silence, in shadows, in ancient alien poisons. Each carried weapons that could split moons. They came at night. The jar didn't move. The first assassin tried to cut the man's throat in his sleep. But the blade stopped inches from his skin, frozen in the air. The second aimed a laser between his eyes. But the laser turned and burned her own weapon instead. The third whispered an ancient curse into his ear. But her voice cracked, and her heart stopped before the final word. The fourth and fifth never reached him. They saw his eyes, and they ran. The next day, the Rillic Empire sent a full battalion. Queen Virith said nothing. She only watched from orbit, her face pale, as the order was given. Destroy the jar. Killed a human. Ships descended with fire and fury, but the man was gone. The jar remained. Still an empty dot. The Rillick forces searched the entire region, but there was no trace of him. That's when something strange happened. One by one, the soldiers began to disappear. Some were found days later, wandering in circles, whispering things no one understood. Others vanished completely, their armor found melted into the ground. Some said they heard a voice calling their names. A calm voice. A patient one. Soon, the Rillick abandoned the valley entirely. They called it Cursed Land. Back on the Rillick homeworld, Queen Virith sat alone in her chamber, staring at her hands. She couldn't stop shaking. No matter how many healers she summoned, no matter how many spells she tried. And at night, she still felt it. The screams. She closed her eyes and whispered, "What have I done?" Far away, in another empty valley, a clay jar sat untouched under the stars, and inside it, the man waited. The jar had moved. No one saw it happen, but those who passed near the ashen valleys swore it was no longer where the battle once raged. It now rested beside a broken riverbed, surrounded by cracked stones and dead trees. There was no trail, no footprints, yet it sat there as if it had always been. A human boy named Ellen stumbled upon it while searching for his lost dog. He paused when he saw it, the sun casting a strange glow over its surface. It looked like something out of an old story. "Is someone in there?" Ellen whispered. The lid shifted. A voice answered, low and calm. "Why are you afraid?" Ellen took a step back, clutching a metal stick he had been using as a walking staff. I heard stories, that you kill people. I only return what they send out," the voice replied. "Do you wish to send out fear?" Ellen didn't know how to answer. The jar was odd, but the voice didn't sound like a monster. It sounded tired. "Are you human?" The boy asked. There was silence for a while, then, "Yes, at least I was." Ellen tilted his head. "Do you eat food?" "I remember food." "You remember it?" "I do not need it now." The boy sat on a nearby rock. "People say you made the Queen of Rillick cry. I gave her what she gave others." "That's scary." "It's fair." Ellen stared at the jar for a while. "Can I stay here a little? My dog ran off and I think I'm lost. You may stay." The boy stayed until dusk. The man in the jar said no more. But something strange happened that night. Ellen's dog returned, not just from the trees, but from far beyond the mountains. It limped, covered in strange dust, but it was alive. The boy hugged it tightly, eyes wide. "Thank you," he whispered, not knowing if the man heard. He did. Soon, rumors spread again. This time, the stories were different. The man in the jar healed a woman's dying child just by letting her sit near him. A lost traveler wandered into the valley, confused and cold, but found shelter beside the jar and woke to fresh water at his feet. A blind girl walked near the edge of a cliff but turned back at the last second, claiming she heard someone warn her by name. Not all who came received miracles. Some found nothing. But those who approached with pure hearts always left changed. The Rillick Empire watched in silence. Queen Virith refused to speak of the jar, but her people whispered louder than before. Her soldiers hesitated at borders. Her generals argued behind closed doors. Faith in her power had cracked. One of her closest advisors, Lord Krelfin, grew bold. "This human, whatever he is, must be erased," he told her. The queen didn't respond. "He spreads false hope among the lower systems. Even our own speak of him with awe. Some say your weakness began the day you met him." Her eyes narrowed. "You know what they'll say next," he continued. "That he should lead. That he should rule." The queen stood. She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She simply said, "Summon the Hollow Sisters." The Hollow Sisters were three ancient entities, part flesh, part machine, kept in hidden stasis for centuries. They were weapons, created before the Empire even had a name. They could tear minds apart from across star systems, twist reality, make the bravest warriors scream in their sleep. They were not sent to kill the man. They were sent to erase him from time itself. They arrived on a dark cloud, floating over the new resting place of the jar. Their forms were not solid, half ghost, half shadow. They spoke in voices that shattered bones and crawled into the soul. "Step out, human," they sang. "Let us see your truth." The man didn't move, so they stepped closer. But the moment their feet touched the earth near him, they froze. For the first time in all their long cursed existence. They hesitated. Then one of them, the youngest, began to cry. It was not a sound anyone had heard from the Hollow Sisters. The others turned toward her, confused, but she fell to her knees, clutching her head. "I see it. I see too much." The second tried to pull her away, but her arms turned to light and scattered like ash. The third vanished without a sound, and the first, the one who cried, looked into the jar and whispered, "Forgive us." Then she, too, disappeared. In orbit. The queen watched everything. She didn't scream. She just sat, hands trembling once more. The man in the jar closed his eyes and waited again. Rain fell over the valley for the first time in years. It didn't roar or storm, it whispered. Gentle drops tapped against the clay jar, washing away dust and dried blood. The man inside sat still, unmoved, untouched by the wet or the wind. He had seen so many seasons come and go. But now, the world around him was changing faster than ever. After the Hollow Sisters vanished, the silence that followed was louder than war. Across the stars, old enemies of the Rillic Empire took notice. Weak planets began to rise. Resistance. Movements formed again. The name of the man in the jar was now passed between systems like a quiet fire, too small to be a threat, too strange to be ignored. People began calling him the listener. No one knew why. Perhaps it was because he never shouted like tyrants, never gave speeches or commands. He simply listened to pain, to fear, to what others tried to bury. And somehow, by listening, he changed things. One morning, an alien girl named Vesa approached the jar. She was from the Corellan people, small, feathered beings with soft eyes and voices like music. Her tribe had been wiped out by the Rillic long ago. She was one of the last. She didn't speak at first. She only knelt in front of the jar and placed a broken necklace on the ground. "I brought nothing," she whispered. "But if you will hear me, I will speak." The jar did not respond. But she continued. "I carry the pain of many," she said. "My parents, my sisters, they begged to live. They screamed, and no one came. I screamed too until my voice left me." She paused, her hands shaking. "But today, I choose not to be silent." She told her story, every piece of it. She cried, cursed, begged. Hours passed and she spoke, on not caring if she was heard or not. But when she finished, her body felt lighter. The weight on her chest was gone. Then the voice came. "You have been heard." That was all, but she collapsed in tears. Not of pain. Of peace. And when she stood again, the necklace she'd left behind had changed. It now glowed with soft white light. She held it to her chest and smiled. Then she turned and walked away. Word spread that the listener could heal wounds not of the body, but of the soul. More came. Some offered songs. Others offered silence. Some came to curse him. They were not turned away either. But Queen Virith watched all of this from afar, and inside her a storm built. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat without the taste of ash in her mouth. She began seeing things, hearing voices in mirrors. Her court grew afraid to speak near her. One day she smashed her throne with her bare hands. "What is he?" She asked the mirror. "What is that, man?" But the mirror only showed her face. Pale, hollow, shaking, she gathered her most trusted. Seer, an ancient creature with no eyes, who spoke only in riddles. She demanded answers. The seer listened to her trembling breath and said, "He is not a god, not a weapon. He is what you made him." "I made him?" She snapped. "You created the silence he now fills." The queen rose and struck the seer. He didn't move. He only whispered, "He will not destroy you unless you try again." She dismissed him, but the warning stuck in her mind. Still her. Pride refused to break. She called upon her secret project Ragnir, a war beast built over 20 years. Born in labs, raised in void space, fed only on pain and flame. It had never seen sunlight, never failed a target. She gave it one name, the listener, and the order: crush him, or do not return. The creature was launched alone inside a black pod that burned through atmosphere like falling iron. It landed near the riverbed in silence. The pod hissed. Open. Out stepped something huge, half living flesh, half steel, with arms like mountains and a face of stone. It walked toward the jar. Each footstep cracked the ground. The birds fled. The air grew thick and still. The man did not move. Ragnir raised its massive arm, ready to strike. But then it stopped, and it knelt. It placed one metal fist against the earth. And it whispered, with a voice full of confusion and fear, "Why? Do I remember crying?" The man opened his eyes. "You were built from pain," he said softly, "but pain is not your purpose." Ragnir fell forward, shaking, growling, low like a dying child. Something inside it broke, something the queen had never programmed. It turned, and it walked away. The jar remained. And in the skies, Queen Virith screamed. The queen locked herself away. No one dared enter her throne hall now. The doors, once guarded by elite warriors, stood empty. Her palace grew cold. Her people whispered in corridors. She was still alive, but barely seen. Some said she had stopped eating. Others claimed she spoke to shadows. Even her most loyal followers avoided her gaze, and outside her palace, the listener continued to draw attention. He had become more than a myth, more than a ghost in a jar. He was becoming a symbol. Across distant planets, artists painted his clay jar on broken walls. Refugees whispered his name before they slept. Soldiers, tired of war, laid down their arms and made pilgrimages to the valley where he rested. Not everyone believed the stories, but they believed in the silence he stood for. It was peace, and it frightened the powerful. Back on Earth, a small human ship reached orbit around the Rillic Empire's core world. Captain Lena Dross, once a war survivor from Theron Ridge, had heard the tales. She didn't believe in magic or gods, but she remembered the jar. She had seen it once, long ago. She was only a child then, hiding in a cave while fire lit up the sky. But even through the flames, she remembered the man sitting calmly in the dust. She wanted to see him again, not as a hero, not as a god, but as a human. She landed in the valley quietly, stepping out alone. Her boots crunched over dead grass. Birds flew from the trees. And then she saw it. The jar was still there, the same clay, the same cracks, but now flowers grew around it. Vines twisted softly along its sides, blooming in impossible colors. She stepped closer and spoke carefully. "You probably don't remember me." The lid opened slightly. "I remember every voice that begged not to die," he said gently. Her throat tightened. "You saved me. No, you survived. That was your strength." Lena knelt beside the jar. "You're changing the galaxy." "I'm not trying to. That's why it's working." There was a pause. "Why did you really come?" he asked. Lena lowered her voice. "Because the queen will strike again. You've embarrassed her. She will burn every world just to erase the memory of you. She already tried. She's not done. The air grew still. He said nothing for a long time. Then finally, she must face herself. Lena didn't understand at first, but something in his voice made her heart pound. You're not going to fight her? She asked. I already did. But what if she destroys everything? She cannot destroy what she's already lost. Lena stood uncertain. That night, she returned to her ship, but she left behind something on the ground, a small human flag, a reminder that he was one of them. That same night, a large storm brewed on the Rillick homeworld. Queen Virith woke in a cold sweat, her skin burning. She stumbled from her bed, breathing hard. The walls around her shimmered with images, faces of the dead, echoes of voices, pain she couldn't erase. She screamed for silence, but none came. In her fury, she summoned her last weapon, the Star Eater. A hidden station deep in space, capable of firing a weapon that could crack planets. It had been designed as her final answer. In case her empire ever slipped from her control. She now pointed it at the valley where the jar sat. Erase him, she commanded. The officers hesitated. One whispered, Your Majesty, the valley is now filled with civilians. Fire anyway. The order was sent. A timer began ticking down. A long silver beam began to hum. The stars dimmed as energy gathered. Back on the planet, the people around the jar, pilgrims, mourners, lost wanderers, felt the sky shift. They looked up and saw nothing. But the silence grew heavier. And the man in the jar opened his eyes. He stood, for the first time in years. He stepped out. His feet touched the ground. The vines parted. The earth beneath him seemed to hum. He raised one hand, not to strike, but to listen. His fingers brushed the air, and the beam never came. Somewhere in space, the weapon shattered before it fired quietly, like glass under pressure. Back in the Queen's palace, alarm screamed. Sparks rained from the walls. Her control systems flickered and died. Her throne collapsed behind her. She fell to her knees. Wide-eyed. No one touched her. No one invaded. No soldier ever came near her palace. But she whispered. Over and over, he stood up. Asterisk, the whole galaxy felt it. When the man in the jar stood up. Something ancient shifted, something that lived deep inside all living beings, even those who never knew his name. The energy that once held galaxies in fear suddenly cracked like ice beneath a slow and steady heat. People said it wasn't power he released, it was understanding. Ships halted mid-flight. Soldiers paused mid-command. On planets near and far, children stopped crying, not because they knew why, but because something quiet entered their hearts, and the Queen of the Rillick Empire could feel it too. She no longer ruled from her throne. She stayed in a dark chamber, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide with sleepless fear. Food rotted on her table. Her hair, once silver and perfect, now tangled like old wires. Her empire was still strong, but she was not. Her generals were unsure what to do. Some spoke of betrayal. Others whispered of surrender. But none dared approach her directly. She still spoke to her reflection, though the mirror no longer replied. I was a queen, she said to the glass. I ruled with strength. I destroyed threats. But the glass only showed her face, hollow, old, weak. What did he do to me? She whispered. Back in the valley, the man stood on bare ground. His clay jar sat behind him, quiet, unchanged. He didn't carry weapons. He didn't give orders. But when he stepped into the open fields, those nearby followed. Not because he asked them to, because they wanted to walk beside him. A woman missing both legs floated beside him in a hover chair. A young man with burned scars took his hand. An alien child with glowing skin rode on his shoulder. They made no army, just a path. And as he walked, the grass grew greener. Old machines, broken from war, slowly hummed to life again, not as weapons, but as warmth generators, light towers, shelter builders. The people called it the renewal. Not magic, just healing. Man walked from village to village, and without speaking much, he brought change. He told no one what to do. But when he listened, people found answers themselves. The Rillic Empire could no longer hide it. Entire border colonies refused orders from Central Command. Peace groups formed in places where violence had ruled for centuries. Songs were sung in different languages, but with the same message: we have seen the jar, and we are not afraid anymore. And Queen Virith? She lost her voice. Literally. One morning, she tried to speak, and no sound came. No injury, no attack. Her mouth moved, but silence followed. The palace healers found no cause. The tech mages found no corruption. Her voice was simply gone. Some said it was punishment. Others believed it was mercy. But the queen knew the truth. It was the wish. His words, still echoing in her heart, had never left. Now she had no more commands to give. She was no longer feared, just forgotten. She sat alone in a hall that once roared with life. Dust gathered where banners once hung. The throne sat empty behind her. Then, one day, a sound echoed down the corridor. Footsteps. Not many. Just one. Soft. Steady. She didn't rise. She didn't need to. She knew who it was. The man in the jar entered quietly. He didn't glow. He didn't float. He just walked like any man would, and yet the air bent gently around him. He stopped in front of her, silent. The queen didn't meet his eyes. She stared at the floor. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her voice was gone, but her eyes screamed 1,000 questions. He knelt beside her. "I didn't come to punish you," he said. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She nodded slowly. Her lips moved. "Then why?" He looked around the shattered hall. "Because you're not a queen anymore. You're just a person." He placed something in her hand. It was soft, warm, a single flower, the same kind that now grew around the clay jar. She looked at it, hands shaking. "Your voice is gone," he said, "but your choices remain." Tears fell from her eyes. She couldn't stop them. She didn't even try. He stood. She looked up at him, desperate, hollow. Her mouth moved again. "What do I do now?" He answered, "Whatever you truly mean." Then he turned and walked away. She watched him go, holding the flower tightly as the sound of his steps faded from the hall. The man returned to the valley, the same place where it all began. The battlefield was no longer scorched and dead. Grass grew there now. Children played where bombs once fell. Small homes were being built by people of all species, human, alien, hybrid. No one cared about flags anymore. They cared about healing. The clay jar waited where he left it, still cracked. Still simple. But now, surrounded by color and life, he sat back down, just like before. No crowd followed him this time. No cameras, no soldiers, no noise. Just the wind, the sky, and the soft hum of a peaceful world. Some called him a legend. Others called him a mystery. But those closest to him knew the truth. He was only a man. He never claimed more. In the distance, Queen Virith stepped onto the edge of the valley. She wore no crown, no armor. Her hair was tied behind her like a traveler. She held a walking stick and wore plain clothes. No one recognized her. Most didn't even glance twice. She walked the long path alone. Each step slow. Each breath heavy. But she made it. She stopped a few feet away from the jar. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. She slowly sat down across from him. Neither spoke for a long while. Then, She reached into her pouch and placed something on the ground between them. Royal ring, the last symbol of her empire. I'm not her anymore, she said softly, her voice weak but returned. The queen. She died the day she felt what others felt. He looked at the ring, then at her. Good, he said. Virith let out a shaky breath. I don't know what I am now. A person, he replied. That is enough. She looked down, her eyes wet. I used to believe I needed control, power, that it would make me strong. And did it? He asked Dot. She shook her head. It only made me smaller. The jar didn't move. But the wind grew calm. She smiled for the first time in many years. Do you forgive me? He answered without hesitation. I was never angry. Her lip trembled. She looked away, ashamed. I wish I could undo it all. You can't, but you can grow something better in its place. She reached forward, gently touching the dirt in front of the jar. Then I will stay. I don't deserve to rule, but maybe I can learn to serve. He nodded once, and she stayed. Not as a queen, not as a leader, but as a student of peace. In time, others joined. A former Rillick soldier who had lost his entire unit. A girl born blind who had once been healed by a whisper. A human engineer who once feared all aliens, but now built homes for them. The valley became more than a place. It became a way. A way of listening, a way of healing, a way of living without fear. No guards, no rulers, no empires. Just people, working together. One day, a group of children asked the man why he lived in a jar. He smiled gently and replied, because it holds what matters. But it's just clay, one of them said. Exactly, he whispered. So are we. Years passed. The man in the jar aged slowly. His body grew thinner, his eyes deeper. One morning the sun rose over the hills and the birds sang. The wind was soft, but the man did not rise. He had passed in his sleep. No one cried loudly. Instead, they sat in silence just as he had taught. They placed wildflowers around the jar. They did not build a monument. No statue. No grand words, only a simple plaque carved in stone beside the jar. He listened. We heard. And the world moved forward. Not perfect, but better. And the story of the man in the clay jar was never forgotten. Asterisk.